So welcome everyone. Again, my name's Dennis Baker. I'm the business program director. We're going to jump into it because we have some fun things to talk about. So Mitzi's the director, producer. How many titles do you have? Because you're like the head queen of this. So let's start us off. Talk about just kind of how did this get started? Was it, just tell us how your vision was to like, I want to make this happen.
Well, many things, but hi everyone, by the way. Thanks for coming. You know, it was several different elements. I mean, one, I have a huge passion for learning and teaching and feeding the brain and the psyche. And I noticed that when I was on set a lot, I would watch the different directors work with actors and how each one of them had different nuances, but that really interested me. And, you know, and then I was thinking one day, people see reality television, which is not really reality, and they see, you know, the sort of finished product of film and television, but they don't really see the work that goes into getting those moments. And for me, that's always been of great interest. So it just sort of evolved, and you know, and then I approached Larry and asked him if he would be interested in investigating that journey with me, and off we went. So it was quite beautiful.
Larry, you obviously said yes, and then was that where James came in? Were you, right. Yeah, how did James come in, and how did USC happen? Kind of context of this USC class was the one we were going to experiment in, the context of all of it.
The whole thing was horrifying. When I think about it, I just go, how was I out of my mind? But Mitzi was a student of mine, and people had said, and I'm sure they do with other teachers too, you know, this should be put in the, you know, someplace where people can see it, but part of you goes, why would anybody be interested? And then, you know, people were, and I think it's those of you, and most of you are actors, I just go, it's so vulnerable to have somebody come in and watch the process and know that you can fail and know that you're going to be judged, and then get past that and go, well, you're going to be judged every day anyway. It's not personal. Someone's going to say, I loved it, I hated it, you're horrible, you're my guru, you're the best, you go, shut up. You know, if you feel like you have something you want to say to people that may be educational, I don't know. I've taught for 44 years. It's been my life. I love it. I just finished a 4-week workshop. I just love it. I love actors. I love writers. And my greatest thing was the writers we had and the writers of Tootsie. I mean, when you watch that movie, you just go, that's just unbelievable. And all those people are gone that we pass on. I'm not trying to be depressing, but we leave something behind, and you want to leave something that has some humanity, some integrity, and some risk. So when, you know, Mitzi approached me, I said, well, if I can do that, then maybe it'll be helpful, or that was my feeling anyway.
And then was the relationship already set up with USC, or does that, what kind of was that? Why there?
Well,
why?
Jim Brooks and Barnett Kilman, who runs the film school for comedy and young directors, asked me, because I had worked with Jim Brooks on As Good as It Gets, and we had just developed a friendship, and he brought me to USC. I was overwhelmed. I mean, because Jim Brooks, to me, when I see terms of endearment or broadcast news, I go like, that guy's just unbelievable. So when we became friends, I had to kind of go, and he would come to class and just sit in class for days and days, and I go, well, and then he asked me to do it, and I was thrilled and scared, and we did it 1 year, and it went well, and they said, come back, and I said to Mitzi, maybe we can create a documentary out of that night. It was completely an improvisation. None of us knew anything. I didn't know what I was going to say. They didn't know what they were going to be asked. There's nothing that was planned in that documentary. Nothing.
At all.
It is a complete improvisation.
And you had a 4-camera setup, as you were saying, to try to get it all.
Right.
in
Right.
kind of one take type of way because you didn't know what was happening.
At all, yes, yes, I agree. Yes, there were no marks on the floor, and I had 4 cameras, and I sat in the corner behind a monitor watching all 4 cameras and directed them, which was very exciting. I had never done that before. So as they were having complete discovery, I chased them and followed them, and we were sort of all one big symbiotic movement, sort of. We were
talking about backstage how this wasn't the only scene that you guys filmed or worked on. So talk a little bit about maybe
Crazy
why this
Stupid
one.
Love and Network. But to have Sirena and Alex, who have been past students of mine, we were talking about it, we had a way of speaking to each other or looking where we trusted. Because the trust that they showed, I mean, I know you watched it, they didn't know what I was going to say. And my favorite thing, and I just love it because they were, doing, I don't know, the 5th take or something. And I said to Sirena, she was going, kiss him. And she did. And then Alex is like crawling up the couch. And then Sirena said, good day. And I just went, it was so friggin' funny. And that was them. That was that thing of actors trusting themselves with their impulses and not their minds. Sandy Meisner, who was my first teacher, said, do it before you think about it. And I never forgot the great teachers that I had, Sandy and Stella Adler, and Sandy would yell, do it before you think about it. And that's what these 2 wonderful actors did. And without that, we would have nothing. And the fact that Mitzi was so determined to get this damn thing on film, and I was like, but it's because of Mitzi and these 2 people. And I'm not saying I didn't have anything to do with it, but it's really them, because all I did was yell.
We're going to jump in the actors for a minute, but I can't, from an education background and as an actor, and we talked about this, Larry, watching you teach, it just blew me away. Because one, you've done it so long, but you're the ease that you have with it, and just the sense of like you had no ego about it. You were just like, I'm going to play with you and all that kind of stuff. And there's so many quotes that you say and so many things, and I grabbed a couple of them. You say the work is the process. The work of the process is joy, which we as actors we understand that in kind of like the grounded, earthy level. But I'm curious. When you say that, what do you think? What is joy for you in that? What does joy mean?
That a human being, an actor, would risk, would trust you. Judi Dench, great Judi Dench said, when I'm rehearsing, if I'm not laughing, it's not a good rehearsal. And she's talking, as I said in the thing, if you're doing, the Scottish play, or you're doing Long Day's Journey into Night, you gotta have some laughs. And so I realized through all of the great people that I have been able to work with, and working as a young actor with Jerome Robbins, and I worked with Neil Simon, and I worked with Michael Bennett, and I worked with Burt Sheveloff, and I was on Broadway a lot, and I looked at the greats, and they taught me, and they set me up for wanting young actors to fall in love with writers, and that the writer and the actor are symbiotic. They cannot exist without each other. And I say to my students, you start reading the greats. You go back to the Greeks, you go back to Shakespeare, you go to Ibsen, you go to Strindberg, and then you go up to Mamet, and you go up to Miller and Tennessee Williams, and you go, they sit in a room by themselves, and they give us this brilliance, and we have to match it. There was a couple who did Long Day's Journey into Night, and they went to a place in class today that literally froze my blood. It was so raw. And I went, that's a family in pain. But they went to a place that, and I said to them in the class, I said, I didn't want to, fuck it up. I didn't know whether to speak or not. And I didn't speak for a long time because sometimes you just have to shut up. You have to know when. And I think that's a good director and a good teacher. So I just feel grateful that I got to be a teacher. And this is, I said, 44th year. And today I was as excited as though it was my first day. I'm not kidding you. I love it. It's an honor to be in this work.
We can clap that out. Yeah, absolutely. Take that. I kind of want to hang on that moment of the long journey story because the idea of physicalizing subtext is such a clear, now that we saw it and you talk about it, obvious starting point in comedy where it kind of slaps you in the head of like, why didn't we think of like, yeah. Is that the same thing for drama? Is the idea of the subtext activating it, making it alive, creating that emotion and a need, is that also how you approach it, or what's your recommendation for actors?
You know, Dennis, I talk about this all the time because it was a pinnacle moment for me when I worked with Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile. And when Michael came to work with me, he didn't want to. And I've told this story many times. And he said, I don't want to work with you. I don't want to coach. I said, well, the studio has asked me to work with you, so sit down. And he kind of saw that I wasn't kidding around, and I knew he wasn't kidding around. And he was a big guy, you know, and I said, I want to hear everything about your life. And boy, did he. I always get emotional when I talk about Michael, God bless him. He just opened his heart and he told me everything and stuff that I can't even tell people because it's so difficult what he went through. And we're sitting there and we don't know each other, and he hit this pain and he grabbed my hand and he just sobbed. And I turned to him and I said, Michael, you can play John Coffey because you have the pain of the world in your eyes, and that's necessary to play John Coffey, Jesus Christ. You can do it. And he had never done a part. So I'm saying the actor is a brave, courageous, extraordinary being when they work. And Arthur Penn, the great Arthur Penn, said, good actors go where nobody else wants to go, to teach us humanity. So I work on comedy and drama pretty much the same because it's about human need. You hope the writer's funny.
I just have to say, though, that Larry, the way he works with actors, I mean, he goes right to that place that we all are afraid of going to, and he gives people permission that it's okay, that we're all crazy, but as artists, we have a good place to put it, and it's really quite amazing.
Funny. You know, Mitzi, that reminds me, I was working with Chris Rock on this movie called Top 5. And we're there and we're getting ready to do a take, right? And I go up to Chris, and we had a great time. He's a great guy. And I said, okay, Chris, in this scene, you know, because he was the director, so we kind of did it together. And I was crying. And the tears, he goes, why are you crying? And then he went, you're playing the part. I said, well, that's how I have to coach. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that's what I did. That I get into the circumstances of the writer, and then I start to get involved in the story. And I thought, how much fun is this? How much friggin' fun is acting and writing and directing? And then one night, Scott Rudin, the great Scott Rudin, the producer, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. We have to get a really important take. Chris is in it. Scott said, okay, Larry, you direct it. What? He said, I'm exhausted. He just turned the crew over to me. And, you know, wonderful Rosario Dawson and great Chris. And I went, I'm insane. It's raining. It's 4 in the morning. I have to get the shot before the sun comes up. And I've never directed a movie. And they just said, go. And I did. Because we get to do this. And when people are entitled and they think they deserve everything, and why doesn't my agent and my manager say, shut up and go to work and fucking give something to people. Stop trying to get everything. God, I can't be stopped. I just shut, like Mark Rylance in Labette when he played that great actor, and he's doing this monologue, and Mark Rylance goes, "Shut up, shut up." I'm not saying another fucking word.
Please do.
I was going to ask what makes a good acting coach, but you just answered it for me. Thank you. That's brilliant. For our actors, you worked with Larry, so you kind of knew, you were walking in knowing who he was, kind of what's going to happen, but at the same time, we're talking that it's improv. You don't know what note he's going to give you. You don't know what's going to happen. You're just going to take it and go. Do you prepare for that, or do you not prepare for that?
Well, actually, you prepare. And you want to be completely 100% prepared and ready to let go of that preparation, I think would be the easiest way to put it. But to have fun. I mean, you can see the joy that this man has, and that affects everyone in the space. And Mitzi mentioned that he brings us to places that are really scary to go. But that's what all of us actors want to do. We want to go to those scary places. We want to go to those thrilling places. And so when we're working with him, and I think as actors, our job is to be able to do this without him, obviously. But one of the great joys of working with him is that you are completely seen as an individual. You're completely embraced, the way that Michael Clark Duncan was in his story. He felt seen, he felt heard, he was being listened to. And that's how it feels as a student of this great human being, to be reflected in that way, and then to be encouraged to go. You actually said to me, and I think it's in here still, just Sirena, go, just go. And it's that what I think we have to give to ourselves, which is the permission to go. And I think we spend a lot of time containing and being concerned about, is this going to be the right way? Am I saying this the right? Is this, even though we've done all this organic work as well, we start getting in our way instead of going completely open. And that when we're open, that's when we do good work. And what I've been asking Larry to do is, will you please start teaching directors? Because if we as actors have directors that we can walk into a space with, that will want to do this work with us, that are as excited as he is right here in his chair. You see the way this little kid, this child came to me. It's that excitement, that raw excitement of a child. And I would wish for all of us to have the opportunity to work with someone at least once in our lifetime that works with this joy, this enthusiasm. And also, he does expect the preparation to come in. And when we were working on a scene by David Hare, My Zinc Bed, I was watching all these videos from David Hare speaking. Who is this man? Where does he come from? And he at one point said, beyond discipline is freedom. And hearing that, I have lived my life by those words since that, and it is fucking awesome.
Oh, my turn?
Go for it.
Well, I mean, I think more than anything, especially I'm guessing you already feel what it's like to be around him. Safe. You feel very safe. And, I often think about what it is that we do up there, whether it's on stage or on camera. And it's, being comfortable with being uncomfortable and being willing to be wrong, if that's a thing, right? I mean, you can never really do a scene right or wrong. It's either accurate or inaccurate. How accurate are you to what the writer is trying to put on paper? And so you can't get it wrong, but how accurate can you be? And it's a lot easier to give yourself up to that when you know that the person that's kind of overseeing and helping you out only has your best interest and the writer's best interest in mind. So you really lose a lot of the fear that comes with what we do at times, right? And I think that's just a testament to you, because I trust you completely, because you know a lot of my shit, so, I mean.
Well, but, for me, I've seen acting teachers really do damage and hurt the actor and tell them they're full of shit or whatever, and I talked about and I feel this. I'm sure I made mistakes. I know I did when I was younger. I say first do no harm. The actor is the vulnerable one. I'm in the safe chair. I need to know my shit. I need to know those plays backwards and give them the exercises they need. But the actor is vulnerable, and teachers have no right to humiliate or blame the actor. I say, to me, if the actor isn't growing, that's my fault. And if they're lazy, that's because they're scared. And I say, if you won't work on your voice, please don't come back to class, because I won't collude in your failure. And I say, to be an actor is to be an athlete and do your work every day, and not be entitled. And so with these two wonderful people, and Mitzi and Dennis, kindness and openness and passion, not anger and humiliation and judgment.
Larry, I don't think you realize, because you're the master of the craft, that there are a lot of situations like that where actors they do endure damage, or from reaching out, and it's unfortunate. But the great news is that by doing this documentary, I think, is that people will be able to see that there can be a very safe environment. And the whole time I was editing it, I kept saying to the editor that was working with me, I kept saying, this is for the person in Idaho that would never have a chance in their lifetime to participate with a guy like this, a mentor like this. So, it's a blessing. I really appreciate it.
And, I think it's not just something for actors to garner something from, and not just directors and people in this business. It's about anyone in any field finding a way to give themselves permission to open up in their own space, whatever that is. And I would hope that this documentary would touch people in all vocations,
Well, I had a gentleman that said to me after he saw it when we had the screening last week. He's a graphic artist, and he said, I completely identified with this, because as an artist, I do my drawings and renderings, and I push them and push them and push them till they go to their furthest place, and then I pull them back so they're not so grotesque. And it's about taking the steps towards a particular thing, and allowing yourself to go as far as you can, and then find that space where it's it's just right. So.
And a basketball coach watched it, and he said, I couldn't believe that an acting coach would be like a basketball coach. I said, really? I said, I don't know. But then, he said, and I said, whoa, it's like, go. Run.
Alex, can you share the story that you shared backstage about your prep for Fresh Off the Boat? Because I think it goes to the idea of what you were saying. When you don't have Larry coaching you, or when you maybe don't have a director that is always 100% working in this way, how do you still do the work you need to do as an actor to prepare, to find the improv, to find the moments, and trying to bring some of that work from the studio or the class into the real world situation?
Well,
if you don't want to be that specific. Maybe.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But when I watched this was about 2.5 years ago. So when I watched it the first time, I only judged everything that I did, because as you're all actors, so you know what it's like to watch your work and then to go, I could have done this or this or this or this or this, and there's always more, right? You're never done. So for what I've learned working with Larry is to take care of myself and know that our best interest and our best work isn't necessarily gonna be the first thing they think about on set. Too much money, too little time, too many people. So for me, I tried to show up very early and get myself really comfortable, if you're allowed, right? I mean, there's certain limits with where I'm going to play, where do I think the cameras are going to be, What are the things and the spaces in front of me that I can get comfortable and play with so that when they do show up and they do call me there, I'm familiar and I'm prepared already. I can touch this stuff. I can touch this stuff. I talk to the prop master. How many of these do we have? Because in this scene, I wanted to flip that table over. It's not my table. They didn't have a second table. I can't do that kind of stuff. So you have to respect the space. And so part of respecting the space is knowing what you're allowed to do and being a professional about it and what you're not allowed to do. And then playing fully within that dynamic. So I guess
That's great.
That's your answer.
Well, it's just in the end, it goes back to the idea of what you guys showed in the scene is you got to find we talked about find the extremes to find out what the center is. But then you got to know what those rules are. Not flip, from prop wise to I got to understand it's just not about me, the actor. There's so much other going on, and what's the fence I can play in. So that's taking it outside of the studio into the real world.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I look at Viola Davis, who was interviewed talking about the impact that Meryl Streep had on her, and watching in New York, Denzel Washington work with Viola Davis in Fences, and I went 3 times to watch it. And the first night I saw it, the curtain went up and Viola was like brimming. I mean, full tilt, emotional connection. And dear Denzel Washington walked out and went, oh shit. And then I went back again and he was like, okay, let's play. And the third time they just exploded together. And they weren't afraid of the depth of that play. And the greatest performance I have ever seen to this day is James Earl Jones in The Great White Hope. The greatest performance, and he was not afraid to go to the depth of his soul, and it wasn't a small performance. Nobody wants anybody to overact, but underacting is worse in a way because it has no courage. I don't like overacting, and I don't like underacting. In the theater, you have to show up with your whole instrument. And that's why I say to actors when they go, I want to do film. I go, great, do film. Do the theater. Do the theater. All the great movie stars of yesteryear, the ones you watch on TMC, Paul Newman, Humphrey Bogart, Bette Davis, Jimmy Cagney, the Edward G. Robinson, they went to New York to get the theater actors and made them movie stars. And when you watch Cate Blanchett, in the last 3 or 4 years, she's done Streetcar Named Desire, Hedda Gabler, The Present, the Chekhov play, won an Oscar for the Woody Allen movie, and she also did, which I saw live, Jean-Paul Sartre's The Maids. Now she's going to do a theater version of All About Eve in London. Daniel Day-Lewis played Hamlet when he was 23. It's a vocation of passion. And I get scared when people are, yeah, I don't know my lines. And they show up for the television. Yeah, I don't know. What is my line? I hate you. I hate you. I'm lucky to work with some of the great actors I do, and I want to tell you, none of them are lazy. And they know their goddamn lines. It's not cool to show up and go, what do I say? What do I do?
And to piggyback on the discipline thing, that's something you guys had to know those lines to receive from Larry anything and everything. If you were stumbling on the lines or weren't thinking about that, then you didn't have the second to think about the note and how to translate the note. And that was so evident, and kudos to you guys to just come and bring the discipline that needed to do the work that you guys were doing on screen. So let's clap that out for that. Mitzi, being the director that you had to be, and knowing Larry being the wise man that he is, I'm sure there's so much that you had to cut to make this documentary happen. So was there some babies, some nuggets, some Larry-isms, maybe that's a term that's get used, that you had to cut that were like, I wish my audience could hear him say this? Or
there's so much.
Well, there's the bonus, right, Mitzi? There's the bonus. The DVD bonus. Yeah.
Yes, there's bonus material that is gold. Then there's even more beyond that, Larry. There's, I don't know if you
James
remember.
Brooks and Barnett Kellman, who are
Yes.
interviewed in the bonus material and say some brilliant things, and I say a few good things, but they really, they're fantastic.
Wonderful. Yeah, there wasn't enough time to, and enough space. But there's so much. I mean, one thing we were talking about is that Larry said something I love when you talk about a good actor has a relaxed body with a volcano inside. It's one of my favorite.
It's Michael Chekhov, right?
Yeah.
A good actor is a relaxed body with a volcano in it. It's like Brando, right, in The Wild One, when he looks at Lee Marvin and they take the trophy, he goes, "Don't touch that." And you go, "Oh, I won't." That's scary. It was so quiet. It was so quiet, but so violent. Relaxed with a volcano.
We're gonna soon wrap up, which we could be here for hours just listening to you guys talk. What's one? We always kind of leave with one thing you want to leave the audience with, whether it's an experience you had making the project, something you learned editing it, whatever you want to share. One thing we're like, if you're gonna remember one thing about this process, for lack of a better term, what would be the one thing you would want the audience or someone watching to kind of leave with? I know it's a big question. You guys can translate as you will.
Take a vacation, go to New York, and see 14 plays. If you have money problems, you can get in. There's special ways to get in cheap. There's a young man doing a musical in New York now called Dear Evan Hansen, Ben Platt. There's a huge article in the New York Times about Ben Platt. I've seen it 3 times. Everybody's just going, well, how the hell does he do that? How does he sing like that and weep like that and get angry like that and raw like that 8 times a week? And he does. My only thing I want to say is be proud to be an actor and work smart and work your butt off and never be entitled or arrogant. Walk with humility and confidence, as I said, and take a look at yourself and go, am I really going towards my potential, or is something stopping me? And the 2 things that stop actors in the 44 years I've done it is technical problems, lack of clarity about how to break a scene down, voice work, Alexander work, dialect work, and or emotional problems from their past that makes them too scared, too angry, or too frightened to go past what's comfortable for them. And when you take a look at that and be honest with yourself, you can do anything. It's a great privilege to do what we do. I'm so grateful for it.
Do you want to leave it up there? Because I think that's a great place to end it if you guys want to.
What he said.
What he said.
What he said, yes.
Ditto.
Let's give them one more hand as a thank you for their time and energy.